Moving on. Oh, Uncle Doug.
Uncle Dan.
You know, I believe it was Martin Luther King Jr. who said, "I have a dream." I don't think that that's pertinent to what we're about to talk
And
about.
it's unrelated to Black History Month.
Yes, indeed.
And his dream was of Nephite riches buried deep beneath the earth.
Yeah, well, Martin Luther King Jr., as we all know, our listeners may not know this, but he was super into Mormonism.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he was an old-time Mormon, that's for sure.
that's a big deal thing for him.
Not a lot of people know that.
No, now they do.
Yeah.
and I hope that they disseminate it to all of their friends.
A church that would not allow him to be a full member for 10 years after his death.
Because
Right,
he was
yeah.
too good a Mormon.
That's right.
He was too good at it. So yeah, we've kind of given away a little of the game here, but we're going to talk about
Black rights. No.
about Black History Month in Salem, Utah. So, fellas,
We're going to talk about the thing most unrelated to Black History Month in the country's
Exactly.
history.
Yes, indeed.
one directive of this little internet radio show we have is for us to get fabulously wealthy.
Yes, yeah. And he's working out great. We're
Any
on
day
track.
now.
We're very,
On
very
track.
close to that goal. The other directive of this podcast is to keep Mormons from being able to pretend their shit isn't weird. It's weird AF, people, and they would very much like you not to know that.
That's
They
true.
they can try every name change, roll out an endless series of vacant, grinning Romney bots, but the weirdness is in its marrow, its history, and in the pages of its holy texts, which the church is still tripping over its patrician dick trying to explain away, and yada, yada, yada until you move along. So today, lads, I want to talk about an echo of that weird, pre-whitewashed, magic-obsessed origin of Mormonism. One that literally echoes if you shout into it.
Oh.
And it is the Dream Mine, also known as the Relief Mine. And when I brought this up, you'd never heard of it, right?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, this is a pretty esoteric.
I'm new to this, and
Yeah.
I know a lot of the,
Right.
like goofy Mormon things. So
Yeah, yeah.
like this one, the fact that this one slipped my attention
Yeah.
is fancy.
I think this is illustrative of so much of Mormon weirdness, and it's kind of fun and hilarious, too.
Yeah.
So.
And it's the first time you can mention Mormonism and minor in the same sentence and not trouble.
Nobody's mad.
Exactly, without a series of arrests or an alarming series of not arrests.
Right? Yeah, that's what I was. That's closer to
so-
the mark.
I don't know if you know this, dear uncles, but were we to jump in the Heretic Mobile and drive just 60 short minutes south of our studio, and then hike maybe a quarter mile up a shrubby hill overlooking Salem, Utah, we would reach the entryway to a subterranean stash of riches beyond imagining. To the Heretic Mobile! So this beautiful but maybe just a little improbable dream was indeed a dream of a humble dirt farmer from beautiful Spanish Fork, Utah.
Did you say dirt farmer?
Dirt farmer.
He farmed. Okay.
Poor as fuck.
Right.
And dumb, apparently. His dirt doesn't grow. But one John Hiram Coyle was born to one of the early Mormon settler families in 1864. And they were already on the tattered edge of the deepest rural poverty when he saw his father killed in a rock slide.
Oh, I hate that.
So, yeah, pretty shitty. So a desire for the security money provided very likely haunted the young Coyle and his destitute family.
Yeah.
So grows up a little bit after serving a mission in the southern U.S., where he became renowned for prophetic dreaming. He returned to his family's humble farm in Spanish Fork, Utah, and it was there, on the night of August 27th, 1894, that a sleeping John Coyle was visited by no less a personage than the angel Moroni.
Ah.
He
is known to do this. That
That's right.
Moroni.
He appears in dreams. He of the golden guy on top of the temple with a trumpet fame.
Yes.
Moroni whisked Coyle away to a nearby mountain. Together they passed through hundreds of feet of soil and rock, as if it were merely a fog, said Coyle. And within the mountain...
Wakanda.
Well, exactly. It's so very much like Wakanda, you're not going to believe it.
It's White Conda.
Sorry.
You got to snort. We snorted.
So
I win.
within the mountain, known to locals as Nob Hill, Moroni showed...
Which you're welcome, British listeners.
Moroni showed Coyle 9 huge caverns stacked to the rafters with Nephite treasure, including the Sword of Laban, the magic jeweled spectacles, the Urim and Thummim, and the very golden plates upon which the text of the Book of Mormon was written in the non-existent language of Reformed Egyptian.
Wow. All of that in one place.
Amongst a shit ton of other
Yes.
plates and jewelry.
Well, one can only assume that
9
that's,
caverns.
Yeah.
that's where the carcasses of all of the horses and elephants are.
Right. Everything, all the evidence is compiled there. So, a quick aside for any Never Mormon listeners. The Nephites were the righteous and therefore light-skinned Jewish tribe that inhabited the pre-Columbian Americas. They were wiped out by their cousins, the Lamanites, who turned against Jesus, naturally became dark-skinned. Everybody knows this. So this hillside in the Intermountain West was the obvious place to drag thousands of tons of treasure whilst in hasty retreat from, say, Guatemala. That's just science. So,
Sounds dumb when you say it.
wait a minute.
You know, this is not far from there is here, and that's where Doug made a hasty retreat from Honduras. So I don't know why it seems weird.
Carrying 9 chambers worth of gold in it.
Yeah.
Doubloons and jewels. So back to the
Or
story.
malaria, one of the two. Who knows?
The only thing such a hoard of riches was missing was a mighty dragon to sit atop it and guard it. But as we know, dragons are just ridiculous made-up things that have no place in a truthful documentary reality like this one. So instead of a dragon, the Nephites smartly placed a medium-small mountain atop their multi-billion-dollar treasure pile and were just waiting for the right Mormon to reveal it to. So Moroni instructed Coyle to dig for the treasure in order to provide financial relief in the final days before the Second Coming, which Moroni seemed to intimate was soonish. Remember, this was 1894. Mm-hmm. So, now again to Never Mormon ears. This might sound pretty daffy, but Mormons who know a little about the young life, the young life of Joseph Smith, so probably less than a third of Mormons, I would say generously,
Right.
will find a lot of familiar story points to Coyle's dream. You see, Goodly Brother Coyle's crazy gold fever dream didn't happen in a vacuum. The founder of Mormonism, one Joseph Smith. Quick, what was his middle name?
H.
Patricia.
He was so poor he didn't have one. It's true, didn't have a middle name. They couldn't afford it. He was more than once tried for defrauding his neighbors and townsfolk as a young man.
Yeah.
It is a matter of public record when he would claim ancient golden treasures were buried on their property and only he could find them by use of scrying, which is looking beneath the surface of the earth with the aid of a peepstone. So after a couple arrests and a lot of pissed-off neighbors with a lot of holes but zero treasures, Smith recalibrated his little brown peepstone, and used it to find a mighty treasure, but one only he could see. He said in various versions of a mighty vision, he was directed to the edge of his family's rented farm in upstate New York, where buried treasure in a hill would be found, including a massive gold breastplate, a sword, the aforementioned Urim and Thummim, the magic eyeglasses that will eventually be pointlessly moot,
Right.
and of course a golden book, by which Smith's own very specific description weighed north of 200 pounds.
Also the Liahona. That was in there.
Oh, that's right, the Liahona. It was quite a treasure.
Treasure trove.
Again, another useless thing, the Liahona. We'll talk about another time. Now, for any Mormon nerds out there who want to email us about the 3 witnesses, don't. They all recanted, and no, spiritual eyes are not a thing, and we'll do a segment to dunk on the 3 witnesses another time. So long story short, John Coyle's dream was very much in keeping with foundational early Mormon ideas about the place of magic and magical means of detection in the natural world.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's one of those problems that occurs when you found a religion and you don't quite think about the implications of saying everyone can receive revelation in
Right.
my religion.
Exactly.
That's never going to lead to anything bad.
God can talk to all of you.
Yeah.
This will work out fine.
And we'll see that they say those things, but as we'll demonstrate with John Coyle, they don't really mean them. So
Right.
these days we all know the Mormon Church is possibly the wealthiest church on earth, with over $32 billion minimum in the U.S. stock market and likely tens of billions more in tax-free real estate all over the world.
And that's without Nephite gold.
Pre-Nephite gold. So
Right.
when Coyle had his dream, Mormonism's fortunes were far less favorable. A long fight with the federal government to achieve statehood and the controversial 1890 Manifesto, causing schisms in the church, left their cupboards pretty bare. So it seems Coyle's aspirational vision was really meant to fill his beloved church's pockets rather than his own. So unfortunately for Coyle, he intersected with another dynamic in the changing church. The post-1890 church was trying like crazy to be seen as part of the American mainstream. So they were desperate to paper over all the scrying and the treasure digging. That was the entirety of their foundation. So Coyle's making a lot of noise about prophecies and treasure was a real turd in their mainstreaming punch bowl. So By now, Coyle had sold 114,000 shares in the mine for $1.50 apiece, which is $3.2 million in today's dollars.
So he was able to sell that to like his neighbors and friends?
At the height of the excitement about the mine, around 30,000 faithful saints held stock.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Which Coyle promised would skyrocket to $1,000 apiece when he hit pay dirt. And stock, all these certificates still exist, and families pass them on.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so they're out there. And anybody has a Dream Mine stock certificate, it would be great to go with our growing collection of religious ephemera here in the studio. And I promise you can have the $1,000 when they find the treasure. How about that?
When it actually matures.
So when it matures, comes to fruition. So now a Mormon bishop, Coyle had another dream in 1914 that he was visited by two of the three Nephites. We talked about these immortal Mayan
What
peasants.
was the third one?
I don't know. He was on.
He was busy.
State Road 6.
He had just discovered bagels. He was really obsessed.
We talked about these immortal Mayan peasants in episode 39. It's way too long a tangent to go on here. But the two of the three, for some reason, told him the mine would not only supply hard currency to the church in the last days, but would also restore the recently outlawed polygamy and the Mormon ecclesiastical communism known as the United Order, which, again, we'll discuss another time. Well, Mormon HQ at Temple Square had about enough of his shit. So they published a letter in their newspaper, the Deseret News, which they still own, called A Warning Voice, in which a very stern church leadership fired a broadside at Coyle without mentioning his name. And I quote church leadership. The First Presidency warns the saints against investing in worthless stock, even if promoters allege that they are guided by dreams and revelations. Almost everyone has heard stories of how such and such has found a rich mine by following directions given in a dream, and many fondly hope for similar luck. But in most instances, it will be found, on investigation, that such stories have little or no foundation in fact.
Oh, wow, that could be extrapolated further than they want.
So, sure, official Mormon church, go on and yell about the absurdity of someone else having crazy visions about gold and shit. So nutty.
You're almost there.
Yeah. So 5 days after the Warning Voice was published, the faithful Coyle was removed from his job as bishop, a crushing blow to him and a message received by his ardent disciples. The mine closed operation and the dream went underground. A quick note. This is not some little divot in the hillside. The main shaft goes down more than 2,000 feet.
Holy
wow!
shit.
Yeah, it's a substantial...
Did he buy the land? Did he have the right to do this?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Well, at the time, they weren't so concerned about who owned the land previously.
Yeah, well, yes, that's
Well, they knew it was the Nephites who'd put the shit there for them to
right,
get.
yeah. Lamanites.
So it's a, and the guys who worked on this mine didn't take any pay except for a couple shares a day that they worked. So it was a crazy thing to do.
This is a really brilliant little scam he was running.
So it's a crazy thing to do, but they for real fucking did it. So
Yeah.
renowned Mormon apostle and geologist James Talmage went to the mine and did some tests on the soil and rock, declaring it useless. In a 1928 interview with the local press, Talmage declared, "I say to you that the misrepresentations that have been made in selling stock of the Coyle mine are of the evil one."
Oh. What did he expect to find in the tailings?
Well, they also think that they're going to discover veins of mineral, of metals.
I see.
That's so secondary to the real promise, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, according to what they're actually looking for, finding nothing in the soil and
That
the rock
shouldn't matter.
Right.
shouldn't make any difference at all.
Exactly right.
Unless when they were bringing it in, they were just dropping shit all the way.
Yeah. So despite that, the faithful still occasionally scratched around in the mine, but quietly. And having had enough of this shit, Coyle was called before a high council in 1947 to fully recant his revelatory dream and life's work.
1947?
Yeah, he was really old.
Wow.
He did so, but he was heartbroken at having to betray himself and to remain in good standing with the church. because he expressed that opinion, he was excommunicated by the church he loved and died a broken man the next year.
Oh.
He was also like 87, but the dream did not die with him. No, dear uncles. John Coyle's disciples renamed it the Relief Mine in 1961.
The Relief Mine.
The Relief Mine, and got back to work seeking the treasure and reissuing stock. Despite spurts of digging over the years, the priceless hoard has yet to be found. But even now, 120 years since the dream began, an online community of believers still hope against hope. So strap in for this online community of believers. I found their weird first generation website, and I poked around. It's a Jell-O salad of the bizarre, the hilarious, and the achingly sad. In the testimonials section, I found a doozy of a tale. It's so rambling, so all over the place, that I had to Google the guy whose name was attached to it to make sure it wasn't a Andy Kaufman level prank. Right? And it seems it's not. So here's some highlights from the 18-paragraph fever dream of a guy I will not name, so this isn't more cruel than it's intended to be. Speaking of his childhood neighbor that first introduced, and this is like a contemporary person. Speaking of his childhood neighbor that first introduced him to the dream mine, he would talk and get excited more about freedom and our country than the gospel, it seemed at times. But when it came to the relief mine, that was his very favorite to talk about and most beloved. He later adds, It wasn't until I met my cousin's girlfriend, and then when my cousin was in Arizona, that his girlfriend and I ran away together and got married when I was 17. that I was introduced to the relief mine again. But this time it was with the full power of the Spirit and in more detail of the knowledge and importance.
Wait a minute.
A little later, his adventure begins.
This is unnecessary detail.
Just bragging.
Just a little bit of a humble brag.
Guys, that's nothing. Later, his adventure begins. My wife and I read Norman Pierce's book, The Dream Mine, one chapter every night together. When we had read the whole book, I felt the Spirit very powerfully and knew it was true and that someday it would save my family. So then I called up the relief mine and even drove to the relief mine, but it was hard to get any response.
Called up. How do you call a mine?
It has a phone, apparently. The Nephites left an operating phone. Still later, a battered but unbroken hero keeps an ember of hope alive. Then years later, after I had married and divorced several women along the way,
whose cousins did they belong to?
I had married my most recent wife. She found out about me owning the 20 shares and that they were now selling for $25 per share. So she got greedy and tried to convince me to sell the shares and pay her debts or to pay my debts or some debts with them. Just brief aside, that's $500. When I refused and told her that they are of the Lord and not to be sold and that they will save me and my family, whichever family at the time he had, I guess.
Right, yeah.
Save me and my family.
Or all of them.
When the setting in order came, she said she would divorce me every single time I would go to the relief mine service to do projects and work. I knew no matter what, I had to work at the relief mine and feel the peace and joy of the Spirit of the Lord there. I would feel that as though an angel was with me and calm my soul and lift me up in joy. I would go to work. I would go and work on the projects, even if I lost my wife through divorce. And this great,
that guy's not afraid of
Seems
divorce
to be a
anymore.
well-exercised muscle.
Oh no, you're going to divorce me! I'm terrified.
Just another day that ends in a Y. So he concludes, we will have the fullness of the gospel again, which is united order and celestial plural marriage. We will have temple blessings and priesthood set right again. There will be food enough and money enough and housing and clothes. Get through this. I don't believe there will be any Babylonish things there, like video games, immodest clothing, TV, music, or even candy bars, etc. I'm not making a word of that up.
Candy bars, you whores of Babylon.
Babylonish. Babylonish.
Bunch of Babyloni.
There are several pages of this kind of thing. It's straight, unfiltered, old-timey Mormonism crazy balls in the internet age.
Oh, my God.
You can go yourself to reliefmine.com and give it a look. So Vice.com did an article on the Dream Mine in 2016.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they focused on how believers had taken... Coyle had a bunch of dreams, right? And these prophetic dreams. And he kind of didn't write them down. He would just tell people, and so then they all kind of go through the telephone game, right?
The best way to disseminate the word of the Lord is through sort of
Word of mouth.
and
Yeah.
hoping everybody gets it right.
So anyway, the believers now have taken one of Coyle's dreams and applied it to Trump. Like he had some dream about a collapsing elephant. And apparently, which, by the way, we're also not here in the Book of Mormon times, but apparently it has to do with the Republican Party collapsing and that being the signal of the beginning of the end. So these days, they're a bunch of old-timey Mormon libertarian preppers, so huge surprise. But here's what a guy called William Anderson told Vice about the coming Armageddon. You know, with nuclear war, if you live in the right place, it's not that big of a deal. and would actually come as a relief, Anderson says, since he believes targets would likely be cities like Washington, D.C. The places they're going to hit, they can have them.
Oh.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you live in rural Utah, there are no symbolic targets there. It is a fairly safe place.
That
It's
is a true statement.
Yeah. So, crucially, if the work continued and the treasure was found, not only would Coyle's hidden hoard be worth billions in cash, but more importantly for Mormonism, it would be the first physical proof of their claims of an ancient Jewish civilization in the Americas.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's odd to me they aren't using their billions to split that mountain in half. So
Well, it also could be that they know that there's nothing down there.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like there is an explanation.
ye of little faith. So fellas, that's the whole story.
Boo.
The tale of a treasure greater than all the tombs of Egypt combined lies just a couple miles west of the Payson exit off I-15 South. For anyone with a little shovel and a lot of faith, go get it.
You know, the Dream Mine plays a pretty prominent role in John Krakauer's book about Mormonism.
Under the Banner of Heaven? I don't remember
The Laffertys, the Lafferty brothers, before they
We're dream miners?
decapitated their niece and
Yeah.
killed their sister-in-law, were Dream Miners.
Oh, there you go.
Wow.
See, it can only lead to good.
Yep.
I think that's what we've learned.
It all circles back to something wonderful. So enjoy, everyone.
Well, thanks, Mark. Let's move on.